Hey everybody, welcome to the Song Revolution podcast, brought to you by Nashville Christian Songwriters. Nashville Christian Songwriters exists to empower Christian songwriters worldwide. I'm John Chisum, and this podcast exists to bring you valuable songwriting insights, inspiration, interviews, and just all around good fun with some of the greatest songwriters, producers, arrangers, artists, and creatives, and beyond. You can find out a whole lot more about us at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com.
Hello, my friend. Peter Hartzell here, producer for the Song Revolution podcast. I hope you had the chance to listen to part one of our special two-part show with Centricity music songwriter Ross King. If you missed it, feel free to go back and give it a listen. In this second installment, John Chisum and Ross King dig deep into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to write quality songs in the changing music landscape. From writing on your own to writing top line with producers and musicians in the room, this show will help give you valuable perspective on what you can do right now to grow your songwriting craft. If you want to supercharge your songwriting, I'd love to invite you to join us right here in Nashville, October 17th, 18th, and 19th for our Song Revolution workshop. You'll get dedicated song coaching and critiques from some of the most accomplished songwriters in Nashville. And you'll learn from legendary live music producer Tom Jackson, who has coached music's top stars like Shawn Mendes and Taylor Swift. We are almost full, so don't miss out on your chance to be part of this epic event. Head over to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com right now to claim your spot and save $100. All right, are you excited? Let's get into part two of this amazing conversation with professional Centricity music songwriter Ross King.
So, Ross King, I like to ask this question of our guest because I have so many different people here and the answers are so cool. So many different kinds of answers. And we call this our OBQ, our one big question. And that is, what's been the greatest hurdle in your life, and how'd you overcome it? How are you overcoming? Do you ever hope you will overcome it?
I don't know that I can give you a greatest, but I can tell you that I was pretty depressed after my dad passed away, and I want to be careful to not tie those two things together too much, because depression isn't a result of being sad. But for me, my dad's death and the subsequent things that kind of happened around his death triggered, kind of kick-started me into a depression that probably was latent there, even before he passed. But I literally signed a publishing deal in April, and my dad passed in May. And so I remember joking with my publisher at the time, Mark. I said, I don't know who you signed, but this is who you've got now. And I was socially off. I was emotionally way off. I was spiritually off. I had some unbelief. And I think the reason why I mentioned that hurdle in this context is that songwriting kind of saved my life in that time. Obviously there was more to it, true community and my wife and Jesus and all these things. But from a practical standpoint, I just dove into writing songs, and actually I'm a better songwriter because of that stuff. And I don't necessarily, not glad that it took place, but I am a better writer because I had to say, okay, here are some really hard things I've never written about, or I've never heard anyone sing about, or I've never, put music to this, and I'm going to do it. And I'm going to lean in hard and try to do something redemptive with this stuff. And I'm, I don't know that I'm done forever with that stuff, but I'm better now. And songwriting was a major, major part of that.
We've been talking a lot about songwriting and co-writing and track people, to be politically correct. And, there's so many talented people in this town. And you mentioned something before the break about the difference between sadness and depression, and losing your dad suddenly kind of either brought up something that was already there or triggered a depression. And I know, for myself, we've all dealt with it, to one degree or another. And we say, well, hey, we creative people deal with that. But I think it's just humanity and just, the shape of the world. But I remember a co-write earlier this year where I was with two other writers, and we never wrote because we got into this deep inner healing moment where we're crying and laying hands on one another, and we all had something. One guy in particular was really needy that day, and so that kind of happens. But where's the line between emotion and creativity?
Wow. Gosh, and I'm not a professional, this would probably be something you'd need a counselor to talk about, but I think that we ought to be able to use what's there, and we also ought to be able to transcend what's there, if we're really professional, right? Like, and I hope I'm answering the question correctly, or I'm answering what you're asking, but I talk a lot about how inspiration is part of it, meaning what I'm feeling and how I'm doing and all that matters. But craft is the other part of it. In other words, in spite of or irrespective of the inspiration, I'm in there, But then I think when you add a spiritual component to that, which is that, or even just a human component, that, hey, I'm in the room with two people and something's happening that's bigger than the song. Right? And I'm sure you've had this story. You have a 3-hour or 4-hour session scheduled, and 3.5 of those hours are spent doing that other kind of work. And then you start on or even finish something because of all of that. That brokenness will inform that stuff. And I tell my songwriting students a lot that every collaboration has two goals, and you have to figure out which one matters most. And the first one's obvious. That's get the best piece of art. You get in a room with somebody, you and I, John, sit down together. One of our goals is going to be to get the best piece of art. But the other goal might be have the best collaborative experience, which could involve any number of things that may not even be songwriting. It may be that as two people in a room collaborating, we have an experience that matters. And there are times, like you're describing, where it maybe mattered more to have a good experience with them. They could walk away saying this happened or that happened, more than making a piece of art, right? I mean, and you just have to be the kind of person who's vigilant, who's emotionally vigilant to watch for that. Because if I'm being told by my publisher and the A&R person or whoever, we need a single, get it now, well, that's a job you have. And you should aim for that. But also, if I'm sitting down with a first-time person who I've never written with, and I don't know them and they don't know me, and I sense something is happening, or maybe something happening to me that I can't shake, I think it's smart and right to be emotionally honest about that, and say, hey, before we move any farther, here's what's happening in me, or here's what I sense happening in you. Do we need to deal with that? And you've been in this business longer than me, and there are moments when to not do that is a real error. To chase the song first can be a real error. If something else is happening, that's just even our duty as believers and humans to look to help people.
That's really true. I like the perspective on that. So to not acknowledge the spirit of the room, right?
Right, to read the room.
Yeah, to read the room and feel what's going on in a co-write, whether it's with one other person or two other people, whatever it is, and acknowledge that, to just run through those red lights could really make for a pretty bad day.
Right, and I've actually been the one running through the red lights before and noticed that the other co-writer kind of pauses me. Because, I'll get, at my age and my station in life, 4 kids and a wife and a bunch of bills to pay, I'll think, we got 4 hours, let's write a hit, hurry up, let's go. And I'll notice the other co-writer will be like, hey, John, how you doing? And I'll think, oh yeah, I should probably ask how he's doing because I'm too busy. But I just know that from my own experience, like that story that I shared earlier, there'd been times when I needed that ministry more than anything.
Right. Yeah. I've been that guy.
Right.
You come in and something's going on and you kept the co-write, you kept it because you're just hoping against hope something would happen. And people pick up on that. People understand.
And you can win the song and lose other things. You know, I've said before, like you can win a song and lose the day. You can win a song and lose the relationship. You can win a song and lose the cut, meaning you wrote the best song for you, but not for them.
Exactly.
You know, and there's a lot of ways to win the song that don't give you an ultimate win. You know, and I have a long history of stories, unfortunately, where I won the song, but probably lost something else. And I'm just starting to learn that. So far into my career, I'm starting to learn the importance of looking for what the big win is in every session.
So back to the question of the difference, if there is any, between emotion and creativity. Do you feel that emotion fuels creativity or contributes to creativity, or they're two different things?
I mean, I think it has to. I can't imagine somebody being extremely creative and not being a very emotional person. It probably exists, but I'm sure it exists. But I would think that even if they weren't outwardly emotional, you would be getting some version of their emotion in the music. You know, I mean, occasionally I'll run into somebody in the music world who's very like left-brained. You know, very just like their brain is a spreadsheet. You know, and they're still really good at this. And I'm always amazed by those folks. But I think those are unicorns. I think those are less. I think it's more common that we are people who come in, and even if we're not channeling the emotion we're currently in, we're at the very least accessing an emotion that we're familiar with, right? I mean, I've said before, like, there's a difference between like authenticity and sincerity, or at least in my mind. Authenticity is, let's sing a story that I have lived. Sincerity is, let's sing a story that I can relate to honestly, right? I'm going to write a song about going through a difficult time that I've never been through, but I've been through difficult times. Or maybe I walked through this other thing with my friend who went through that. And I think as long as we're bringing the sincere emotion, you know, that's really essential. And I'll say after all of that there are always outliers, and there's probably some amazing songs that you and I could find the writer and say, how did you write that? And they'd be like, I don't know, I just one day made it up. And we're all hurt that they didn't, didn't really live that. It wasn't something, right? And there are other songs, because you coach a lot of writers, where they put all their emotion into it and it's not very good.
Well, that was going to be my next question. It's like, what about these people that they feel that a song is really all about catharsis? That's all they do, right? Is puke up the pain.
Exactly. And look, we need to find people in our lives, we being writers and creatives, who tell us honestly if something is as good as we think it is. You know, I mean, I am 47 years old. I've been writing songs for 25 years at least. And a lot of the early years of those songs, I wasn't as good as I thought I was. And because I meant it with all my heart, and because I poured a lot of work into it and emotion and time, I thought it was certainly good. And that's just not always true. I mean, there's just a big there's just a big gap between what we desire a song to be and what it might achieve. You know, I always say, in the midst of a song, I try to always say, do they know what I think they know? Do they feel what I think that they feel? You know, and I can't know that, but you can stop and ask yourself that. And I think quite often we're just too busy saying, of course they know, of course they feel. I feel, and I know, right?
We're going to take just a quick break and talk about something that I think is going to be very valuable for you as a Christian songwriter. So check it out.
Do you feel like God's given you a bunch of songs, but you don't know what to do with them? Do you feel like you've got a real call on your life to write, but you're clueless about where to start? Or maybe you've got writer's block and you're wondering if you'll ever get the creative juices flowing again. Well, we've got you covered with NCS membership. NCS membership is all about community and how to grow in this calling you feel deep inside to be heard. We get it. We know that you just want to honor God with your talents and be a good steward of what He's given you. And that's why NCS membership could be your next right step to grow, learn, be challenged, get connected, and ultimately fulfill your dreams to glorify God and reach others with the same passion you feel. It's designed to help you tell your story and to reach listeners who will love your songs. With your NCS membership, you'll receive 24/7 access to valuable masterclasses on topics such as modern hymn writing, worship writing, song form, lyric development, and recording home demos, as well as discounts for other NCS products and a deep connection into a community of creatives who get you. There are a lot of songwriters out there, so you need to be the best you can be to stand out, be heard, and become the songwriter you were born to be. Just go to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com now to check out all the great benefits of becoming part of a decidedly Christian community of songwriters from all over the world. NCS membership, your next right step to being heard.
Well, I just hope that you'll take advantage of that and check it out. All right? We bring you good stuff here on the Song Revolution podcast. So back to our episode.
So coaching becomes kind of a mirror back to the songwriter, those kinds of questions, right?
Right. You are encouraging the other person to take a hard look. I will occasionally say to my students, I need you to go make a list of artists that you don't like and find songs that they have done that are actually really good. And I need you to go make a list of artists that you love and show me songs they've done that are not good. Because if you can't be intellectually honest about your favorites and least favorites, you sure can't be about yourself, right? I mean, that developing that personal suck meter or whatever is really a big deal.
It's good.
And part of that is saying, I'm obsessed with Taylor Swift and here's that one song she did and that's not very good. Or I can't stand John Mayer or somebody, but man, you have to go and say what's good about it.
Right.
And I just think a lot of times our artists are opinionated. I mean, gosh, and we think we know everything about art.
Well, I was warned that you're like brutally honest. I was told that by our mutual friend, John Mace. He
of course
said,
it was.
Boy, Ross, man, he said, be ready because he's like really brutally honest about everything.
Was this brutal? I don't feel like I was all that brutal.
There's not been any brutality yet.
Good,
I mean, we had a great lunch together before this, trying to get to know each other a little bit.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe you've been throwing softballs today, but good stuff, right? And I think that there does come a point in the life of a songwriter it's the job, the position of a publisher, like an A&R person is to an artist. Publishers are to reflect back to us,
right,
if we're as good as we think we are, or individual songs and what's going to help them, or right. I mean, it takes that. Sometimes it feels brutal, but it's really necessary pain.
Well, and this will make sense to you as someone who's worked with so many songwriters, but it was just weird tension of learning to receive the correction and say, okay, I've been told by 4 different people this isn't what I thought it was. So that's in one hand, learning how to receive that and really work with it and deal with it. And then there's the moments where you say, I really believe in this and I'm not quitting until I'm absolutely certain it doesn't work, right? I mean, and that, Seth Godin, he writes a lot of kind of businessy books, and he says something like, who decides if your work is good? When you're at your best, you do. Now the question is, when am I at my best? And that's where it gets hairy. But I have a hard time working with people who can't assess something that they've done, right? But I just think like you have to find this weird tension of learning to hear, I was so sure this song was really good, and now I'm hearing over and over again, it's not that good. And no, this is, and I think sometimes that's about niche stuff too. Like one of my jokes is that my favorite line in most songs that I write is the line that usually gets edited out, and so I just try to go to my own art and put that line in there. And then if I'm wrong, then I'll face the consequences, right? But I don't shove that down the publisher's throat. I put that on the Ross King song.
Exactly.
And then my small group of fans can decide.
Yeah. No, that's really good. That self-awareness. And one of the things that I really emphasize so often with our songwriters is what I'm trying to teach them is how to self-edit, how to think like a songwriter, a pro songwriter, because they come to me, and I work with so many brand new people, regardless of their chronological age. They're just newbies, so many of them, and we love them. We love you guys.
And you've probably never been told a lot of honest things about their songs.
Well, they've never really learned principles. They
Right.
don't have a foundation in the things that you and I take for granted.
Right.
And we could name a bunch of those, but that's what we sell our coaching to do. But but the point is, they come in, they're only feeling their song.
Right.
And they're totally they're just lost in subjectivity.
Right.
And so if you tell them anything negative in any way, then they're do you know what is it, an amygdala shut down, their brain,
yes.
just the chemicals, the rejection chemicals just flood, cascade their brain, and they can't hear what you're saying because it shuts down their ears and their eyes.
Right. And they don't, you said think like a songwriter, and I think they also have to think like a listener. There's that part of it too.
Totally.
I remember, it's funny because about a year ago, in my memory, I kind of called up a memory that I had lost for a while. And the memory was literally the first time I ever made a recording of my songs in probably 1995 or something, or even earlier than that. I had a lyric, and my roommate, I remember this, him telling me, that's a terrible lyric, it's not going to work. And I was so proud of it. I won't even tell you what it is, but it was extremely on the nose, extremely like over the top, prophet-y, Rich Mullins, but not as good as like trying to be Rich Mullins, right?
Yeah.
And knowing 2 years later that he was right, you know what I mean? And I remember like recently, I guess just in all of my songwriting, it just kind of popped back up in my mind. Even back then, my random college student roommate knew as a listener, that's not going to work. That doesn't sound right. He wasn't a musician. He wasn't a music critic. He's now a banker or something. But he knew that's a bad lyric. And we don't want to hear that,
Right. We don't. We need that mirror. We need someone helping us to become more objective. And that's a tough process.
Very. And you've got to, but you would agree with this, you got to do it if you're going to really do this. You've got to be ready for that. And even learn to like, not so much shake it off as to just roll with it. I mean, one of my, recently I was in a write with a friend of mine, and it was three of us. There was a new guy that we didn't know, and this friend of mine, Patrick, who's a great songwriter, and he was telling the artist about me to like in my presence, and he said, Ross is that guy that will assert his opinion very strongly. And I was like, oh man, I don't like where this is going. And then he said something like, and then when you disagree, he'll be like, oh, okay, cool. And I thought, yeah, that actually is me. Like I get super passionate about things that I want to do. But if I sense that's not where the room's going, I'm just like, okay, because I'm confident we'll fight for something better, And that's what young writers have to get better at, is hearing, look, if this is your best idea ever, then there's no hope. You got to have more ideas and more ideas and more ideas. And if a piece of criticism shuts you down, man, it's going to be a tough road for you.
Yeah. You're going to be very disappointed if you can't grow some thick skin and get a little more subjective.
And be inspired by that moment of criticism of, oh, okay, I'm going to find something better than that that's going to convince you that, I'm a resilient and that I have more than one tool in my toolbox.
Exactly. Well, tell us a little bit about your ministry. When you go out and sing and do church dates or wherever you go, what are you talking about? What's going on?
There's a lot of dancing. I'm just joking. No, right now I'm currently doing a lot of talk about depression, anxiety, and emotional health, grief, shame, fear, those things, because it's just been. I've realized it's a less talked about area in the church, and it's been easier for me to write about those things, and it's fueled and informed a lot of my writing. So it's not like it's extremely sad. It's just I'm approaching those topics and then singing about them under the lens of the gospel or whatever. So I'm doing a lot of that, where I've probably got 6 dates on the calendar in the next couple of months that are me going out and doing a concert and kind of singing with the theme, telling stories with the theme of, hey, there's healing for this stuff, and trying to get that conversation more normalized for the church. And like I was saying a minute ago, pop music is just getting really good at that. I mean, emotional health is in the cultural zeitgeist, and the church is, for some reason, slower to do it. I guess maybe we think we should be praying our praying our problems away. And I don't know. I'm not trying to make light of prayer as much as just say we are not as honest. So I've found a real niche in being a person who will talk about this and who kind of starts that conversation for people within the walls of the church. So that's been really a really exciting thing for me, because I'm not going to be the best person at a bunch of different things, but I feel good at this. I feel good at talking about these hard things, singing about them.
So what's one thing you would say, kind of as we wind this down today, what's the one piece of advice you would give to an aspiring songwriter out there listening today?
Critique and co-writing. Those are your two probably greatest shaping tools. And learning to do both and be a part of both comfortably is huge. Now, there are people who never co-write a song and are awesome. I think probably some of our famous songwriters, I don't know who they would be, but I know there are some out there who aren't known for co-writing. Paul Simon, I know, doesn't do a lot, and he's doing just fine. But critique and co-writing, honest critique and co-writing. So find people who will tell you the truth. You know, one of the things that I say a lot to other songwriters is your first critique should be a very strategic one, meaning we tend to go to our spouses, our best friend, our pastor. But I tell people, if you take your song brand new off the presses, right out of the oven, to someone who is not like you, who hasn't been through the thing that you're singing about, who doesn't think the way you do, and you get a bad critique, you will toss the song when maybe you shouldn't. And over time, people who aren't like you will need to hear it. But the example would be, if you write a song about, some struggle that you've had that's very specific, and show it to someone who not only hasn't been through that, but thinks that struggle is silly or whatever, you'll get a bad critique that isn't helpful to you, and you'll quit. So I just say, find the right people to critique your songs, who will speak honestly and encouragingly, but honestly, and co-write. Create a lot with other people.
Ross, been rich today, man. Thanks so much for being with us.
Glad to do it.
Some awesome insights into the life of a professional Christian songwriter and what it takes to survive and thrive. Man, we just wish you the best.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here and thankful for what you guys are doing.
We'll post your socials in the show notes and hopefully connect people with Ross King Music.
Thank you.
All right, bud.
Thanks for listening in today on the Song Revolution podcast. If you're wanting to take your songwriting to the next level, be sure to jump over to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com right now to check out all the valuable resources that we have there for you, especially NCS membership, where you can go deeper into a community of like-minded songwriters and tap into encouraging blogs, videos, powerful masterclasses, and a whole lot more to get you where you really want to go. I'll see you next time.